evening. I'm Melissa Ridgen with your APTN National News. It's day 23 for Iqaluit residents having no access to drinkable tap water due to fuel leaking into the city's water supply. But today there may be some hope. Our Kent Driscoll joins us from Iqaluit. Kent, where are you exactly and what is this new hope?
Thanks. I'm here at the Sylvia Grinnell River, where many Iqaluit residents and the city of Iqaluit have been gathering fresh river water for distribution. If you look behind me, also where the armed forces are setting up their water purification plant here in Iqaluit. That water, that is nice, clean water, although it is recommended that you boil it for a minute before drinking. Now, the good news you mentioned, the hope, the city of Iqaluit has announced that they have tested the drinking water and it is clean. Now the ball is in the government of Nunavut's court. They're testing to confirm the city's result. Now, for a possible timeline, the last time the territorial government tested for gas in the water, it took 5 business days to get a response. Now, the government of Nunavut issued the do not consume order, so they're the only ones who can take it away, which can't come too soon. This is November. Usually behind me, there's a lot of snow on the ground, and that river is significantly more frozen than it usually is. According to Environment Canada, it was 4 degrees Celsius above average all through October here in Iqaluit. The warm weather, that's what kept this river open, and that's not going to last. Back to you in Winnipeg.
Thank you, Kent. Well, the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation says the Ontario government will transfer the death records of approximately 1,800 Indigenous children. Now, the NCTR wants all provincial and territorial governments to follow Ontario's lead and do the same. Negotiations with Ontario to transfer the records started 6 years ago. They are viewed as essential to finding and identifying the children who died due to residential school systems. The National Student Memorial Register currently names more than 4,100 children who were lost, but it's believed there are potentially thousands more. The National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation says it cannot confirm and honour these lost children without the records that are still outstanding in all jurisdictions. The Manitoba Métis Federation has pledged $10.3 million to a northern Manitoba community for care centres and long-term housing. The MMF made the announcement yesterday in the Pas, 600 kilometres north of Winnipeg. The community is considered a hub for northern communities. MMF is vowing that the centre will use a Red River Métis curriculum and will be built next to the current MMF senior care home. In the announcement, Vice President of the Pas Region Judy Mayer said addressing needs through affordable housing and culturally appropriate daycare facilities is just one step in an ongoing program to support economic and cultural strength in our northern communities. Manitoba Métis Federation President David Chartrand says the facility will create roughly 16 to 18 jobs and construction is expected to start next spring. Well, just as Heather Stephenson, Manitoba's first female premier, settles into her new role, she's already had her first lawsuit on her hands. Shelley Glover is Métis. She's a former Winnipeg police sergeant and a former Conservative member of Parliament. She ran against Stephenson to lead the Progressive Conservative Party in Manitoba, but came up short, according to the party's count. Glover says she actually won the election, citing voting irregularities, and she's filed a lawsuit yesterday asking the court to order a new election. The court hearing will start tomorrow. The election was called after former Premier Brian Pallister resigned in part over remarks that he made about residential schools and well-meaning settlers. Well, in northern BC, where high school students led a walkout to protest a Haisla student allegedly being mocked by a teacher for wearing his regalia. On Picture Day, APTN's Lee Wilson explains all that.
Community members, residential school survivors, chiefs, and matriarchs gathered outside Mount Elizabeth Secondary School in Kitimat, BC, showing solidarity with Haisla youth. Alex Grant says his son decided to wear traditional regalia to school for Picture Day on Monday. A teacher allegedly asked why he was wearing a costume.
What's up with the costume today? In front of his entire class, and he repeatedly asked him the question, what's up with the costume? At first, it's not a costume. We take our regalia and our tradition very serious. So
Students showed up in their regalia and support the next day. The same teacher from the incident allegedly tried to separate two students. Grant's son and his friend, they were both kicked out of class. The Indigenous students walked out in solidarity and arranged a protest outside of the school. Grant is proud of the youth for showing their leadership and the community for showing support to his son.
To see so many First Nation students and non-First Nations staff from Mount Elizabeth, our hereditary chiefs, our chief and council here. It was good to see everybody come together and, work or stand in unity as one.
Grant says their family met with the school district and they will be investigating the incident. The school district and the Haisla Nation Council released a joint statement. Coast Mountain School District 82 appreciates, encourages, and supports the collective voice of students regardless of ancestry. As the superintendent of schools, I can assure you that appropriate steps are being taken to ensure that Haisla culture is alive and visible. This is not the first time cultural ignorance has taken place in Canadian schools recently. Last year, a First Nation girl in Saskatoon wore a ribbon skirt to her formal day and was shamed by a teacher's assistant. Grant believes moments like this can give an opportunity to create a better system for youth in our schools, and more can be done to increase cultural awareness.
You look at how First Nations art is not a full class, or you look at the lack of knowledge on our kids' behalf in residential schools. So I'd like to see a lot more done.
Lee Wilson, APTN National News, Kitimat.
We need to take a break, but still ahead, Canada's new Crown Indigenous Relations Minister is talking about giving land back, but does he actually know what that really means? We're going to discuss that after the break. Welcome back. Last week's Cabinet swearing-in ceremony, new Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Mark Miller mused about giving stolen land back to Indigenous people. When questioned by reporters, Miller did not specify what that might entail. Unfulfilled land promises have long been at the heart of a number of conflicts between the federal government and First Nations. They're perhaps the biggest broken commitment in the numbered treaties. To break it all down, I'm joined by Courtney Skye. She's Mohawk Turtle Clan from Six Nations and a Yellowhead Institute research fellow. Courtney, thanks for joining us. So what were your initial thoughts when you heard Mark Miller talk about this land back?
Well, it reminded me a bit of when Justin Trudeau was first elected, and he made this bold commitment to a nation-to-nation relationship. And I said then, I don't think Justin Trudeau really knows what he's talking about. And I feel like Mark Miller's a little bit the same. He's been criticized for co-opting the grassroots movement that is land back. And I don't think the Liberal Party truly grasps, what Indigenous folks who live on the ground are saying and thinking when it comes to, their aspirations for self-government. And, they've really relied on the Assembly of First Nations and kind of the typical organizations that do consultation for them in Indigenous communities. And oftentimes, frontline land defenders and water protectors, they disagree with the elected band council system within their communities. Yeah. And so it doesn't really seem like there's a real understanding of that complexity or what it means to actually implement the aspirations and the rights and inherent jurisdiction of Indigenous peoples in Canada, because there's a lack of commitment to some of the structural changes that would need to happen, say changing the Constitution, provincial boundaries, things like that.
Yeah. Would giving back at least some Crown land bring the government some goodwill, good favor with First Nations?
Well, I think with some First Nations, that makes a difference. But for people like myself, I'm Haudenosaunee, I'm from Grand River, and our homelands, and our the Haldeman Proclamation promises 6 miles on either side of the Grand River forever to our nations. And that land, there's no crown land available within that tract of land. It's all held by third parties, being developed without consent. It was, the legacy of squatting and unwanted settlement, unwanted development means that there's no really crown land to return. So that might work for some communities, but most of the crown land is within, the far north or in northern parts of the provinces, and won't make a real difference for some of the more for the communities that are located, say, near urban communities or in the southern parts of provinces.
Now that this land comment is out there, I mean, what should happen? What should the federal government's next move be?
Well, I think that, I think about it from the Haudenosaunee perspective, and I know that there's been no real effort from Mark Miller, to sit down and open, negotiation tables. Six Nations is a site of one of the biggest land reclamation actions that's happened in the past year at 1492 Landback Lane. And there was no leadership when Mark Miller was minister in the last term to actually sit down and meet and show up. Ottawa's a short drive to Six Nations. They never actually appeared here on the ground. They never did those things. It's a lot of rhetoric, but not actually the actions that you would hope to see. So I'm thinking that, I'm hoping that because there's a new government in place, that they're going to change and start doing some of these actions. But I mean, if the past 6 years have been any indication, it's going to be a lot of empty promises in the near future.
Well, we thank you for taking the time to chat about this, and I guess we'll see just how much land goes back as per promised by the government.
Thanks for having me.
More Manitobans are now eligible for a COVID-19 booster shot. The provincial government now recommends expanding the third dose to all First Nations, Inuit and Métis adults and seniors.
This includes all First Nations, Inuit and Métis adults, so that's 18 and over, including those who are living on or off reserve. And we are recommending they receive their third dose at least 6 months after their second dose. We are also expanding our recommendation for a third dose to include all people who are 70 or older, regardless of where they live. So whether they're in a personal care home, assisted living, or in the community.
Health officials say wherever possible, the third dose should be the same mRNA vaccine as the previous dose. And Quebec is now backtracking on their vaccine mandate policy for healthcare workers after saying those who refused the COVID-19 shot would be fired. The province is abandoning that measure over concerns of major staffing shortages.
Over the past few days, our partners have presented us with potential service reorganization scenarios where we have simulated the impact of the absence of the unvaccinated. To deprive ourselves of 8,000 people that currently will have devastating consequences for our network.
Those without vaccines will be subjected to rigorous testing. The jab will still be required for new healthcare hires. Well, earlier this week, the mayor of a small BC community shared a post on his personal social media supporting residential schools that set off a firestorm of criticism and now calls for his resignation. APTN's Tina House has more on that story.
In a now deleted post that Williams Lake Mayor Walt Cobb shared on his personal Facebook page, the post said that, quote, there is another side to residential schools and that Indigenous people just want to be victims. That post has set off a firestorm of debate and calls for him to immediately step down. This open letter was sent to the Mayor and City Council of Williams Lake, BC, from the Williams Lake First Nations chief, stating, we can no longer abide the City of Williams Lake or any of its elected officials trying to advance a narrative which is a slap in the face to our community, to other First Nations community, or to the vast majority of Canadians who acknowledge the horror of residential schools and who want to assist with reconciliation. And at a recent City Council meeting, Mayor Walt Cobb addressed the issue.
I never anticipated or intended to offend or make light of the residential schools, and for those I offended, I apologize, and I'm seriously sorry, very, very sorry.
For Williams Lake First Nation Chief Willie Sellers, he says that apology is not enough.
It's 2021, Mr. Mayor Walt Cobb, and times have changed from when you were a young man, and it's time to, change with the times or get out of office. It's really as simple as that. They want to talk about the other side of the story and how there was positive experience coming out of residential schools. These are massive triggers for anyone who's actually been through a First Nation community, lived in a First Nation community, and is living with the impacts and the traumas that have been created because of the legacy of those schools.
However, in his apology, Mayor Cobb said that because it was on his personal page and not his mayor page, it was a personal attack on him from the Williams Lake First Nation.
It just shows you how ignorant he is in his education towards reconciliation and actually holding First Nations people up.
And back at the City Council meeting, it was Elder Charlene Below's opportunity to address the Mayor and City Council.
We no longer will be silenced today or ever again. And as the Mayor, responsible for your leadership to your council, I demand your resignation, effective immediately.
Despite calls to resign, Mayor Walt Cobb did not step down, but has rather promised to visit First Nations communities to learn more. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
We need to take another break, but still ahead, highlights from today's In Focus: increased supports for moms at risk of having their babies stolen by child welfare. Stay with us. Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. While spending some time in Banff National Park, our viewer Diane Rusin sent in this snap taken by her friend Joe. Stunning capture of an incredibly gorgeous part of this country. Be sure to send us your photos. You can email them to share@aptn.ca along with any helpful details about what we're looking at, and you will be our next, or have a chance to be our next photo of the day. Starting off on the East Coast, we've got 10 and showers for St. John's, 10 and sunshine for Halifax. La Grande River snow and 0 degrees, Coucherac -1 and snow there too. Saguenay snow, 2 degrees, 2 and sunshine for Val-d'Or. North Bay snow and 4 degrees, 5 and snowing in Sault Ste. Marie. Kapuskasing, you got some sunshine and 4 degrees, Big Trout Lake 3 with a mix of sun and cloud. -4 and sunshine for Churchill, +4 for God's Lake, sunny there. 9 and sunshine for Dauphin and Winnipeg, 10 and sunny for Brandon. 10 and sunny for Saskatoon, 11 and sunshine for Regina. 6 and sunny skies for Buffalo Narrows, 3 and sunny for Stony Rapids. Sunshine and 5 for Fort Chip, 7 and rain for Peace River. 11 and showers expected for Edmonton, 14 and sunny for Lethbridge. 12 and showers for Penticton and Kamloops, 11 in Quesnel, cloudy skies there. 9 and showers for Prince George, -3 in Dease Lake, chance of flurries. -10 and sunny for Beaver Creek, Old Crow -7 and a mix of sun and cloud. Norman Wells, you're going to be -9 and sunshine for for Trout Lake. -2 for Colville Lake with a mix of sun and cloud. Mostly sunny for Polytech, -4. Whale Cove and Arviat, both 0 with flurries expected. You got -13. Tylioke, -15 and sunshine. Arctic Bay, you're also -15 and sunny. On today's In Focus, we talked about the Pope's upcoming visit and doctors prescribing 20 minutes in nature for better wellness. But we also discussed how Indigenous inmates are more likely to be designated dangerous and jailed for longer. And we also spoke to the director of the Mothering Project, a program in Winnipeg that's being used to hopefully replace the birth alert system, which saw child welfare agencies taking newborns from Indigenous moms. Here's some highlights from today's show.
I was shocked when I first started working with women about 30 years ago, after working with young people and men, to see just how disproportionately women, particularly racialized women, are considered as dangerous or violent for things that, as the Court of Appeal in Lisa Neve's case, another Indigenous woman said, for things they say, not what they do. And so, yes, there are things that Renee and other people have done that have caused them to be, further criminalized in the system. But we would never see a man labeled a dangerous offender for the sorts of things that we see women labeled, whether it's Lisa Neve, who was the first Indigenous woman to be labeled a dangerous offender, or Renee, or other women who have come before the system. We also know that disproportionately Indigenous men get labeled as dangerous offenders for behavior that we wouldn't see non-Indigenous men get labeled. And so it underscores the discriminatory nature of the risk assessment tools, as you and many others have really appropriately exposed, but which the government has yet to actually meaningfully address.
For many, many years, one of our priorities is really building those positive relationships. For us here, it's regardless of whether you're a client, a colleague, another servicing agency, the relationship is the intervention. So we've always come from it from a place of advocacy in a kind way that is supportive of the women and building the relationship with agencies. So, you always have some hiccups based on, we advocate for what mom's needs are, and it might not be the same as what the case plan might look like. Well, I think that there's a really big priority put on who is next of kin and who's the family unit based on who mom identifies as that family unit. So I know sometimes, a lot of the times, if it's identified that baby can't go home because there's some work that still needs to be done, let's look at that extended family for baby to be placed where mom can still have full access, right? Because attachment is super important, especially at birth. And so keeping that relationship is really important. So that's a lot of the work that we do.
A young talent in Alberta is turning heads with songs she has written and performed herself. APTN's Chris Stewart talks to singer-songwriter Amanda Gendron.
You said it's all for me. What the hell does that mean? To feel my heart.
Amanda Gendron has been fascinated by music since she was little. The 22-year-old Cree Dene singer plays guitar, piano, writes and sings her own songs.
As a kid, I've always wanted to kind of be a performer, and I was always basing my life around that. And then my parents kind of saw that as an opportunity to invite me to play piano, guitar, sing, and ever since then it kind of stuck.
And her skills are paying off. She's getting some radio play and has songs on streaming platforms. She is performing her new song called Physical today, coming out in January.
It's a very vulnerable song as well, very powerful, and I'm very proud of it. So I'm very excited to share that with everybody. I do have a single right now. It's called Light. It's out on all streaming platforms. I made that when I was quite younger, but I am very proud of it.
I was so happy. Jack Cooper is a longtime talent developer. He says Amanda has that it factor that is rare.
There are many singers who are good singers, but they don't know how to put a song across. They don't live their song, and Amanda does. You feel the song completely while she's singing the whole thing. And so, yes, she's probably one of the best we've ever had.
Amanda says she classifies herself as acoustic pop, and she writes songs that make you feel.
It's just a very ballad kind of, that's kind of what I like to sing, very emotional, very soul. Anything that kind of makes like the hairs off your skin like go up. That's definitely how I like to express my music.
Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Sherwood Park, Alberta.
Watch for her for sure, as she said, on all streaming platforms. That's Amanda Gendron. Well, we are all out of time for midweek news. Thanks for joining us. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Have yourself a great night.